And I do apologise for the delay in proceedings there, ladies and gentlemen, but it appears that we are back, which is fantastic news because this qualifying session is certainly heating up now with John Cole currently in P3. Alan Matthews has leapfrogged into P2, so going board with him just at the moment. He's posted a 1 minute 28.5 to take him, apologies, that's a 1 minute 26.9 to see him in second position, so only just scraping out ahead of John Cole, but John Cole, not to be beaten, has just posted a 126.9, has put it in the wall for celebration there. I think that was more just kind of having to give up and get back into the pits as quickly as possible because he wants to get another lap in, I am sure, as we can see. Apologies for those issues there, but it appears we are back once again. Just a couple of minutes to go in this qualifying session. Now, John Cole leads with a 126.7. In correction, no, it's Andrew Whitehead who leads with 126.3. That fantastic lap from before, still withstanding. You may have seen in the brief kind of scene changes there that John Cole has been working as hard as he can to try and get towards that 126.3. A couple of lockups in there as well, which really do look quite scary on this very twisty and very compact post circuit. You look at a track diagram and it looks quite open, but you just realise how small it is, and you can see why the drivers are certainly being challenged this evening. And just another thing as well, those monster curbs, they really do not take any prisoners at all. They chuck the car about, and it is very impressive to see that not only the cars, but the drivers as well surviving that. As you see, John Cole kissing the curb there, but being able to carry on. Alan Matthews, meanwhile, in P3 at the moment with a 126.8. If you'd like to get a more representative, apologies, the time will be a little bit off owing to the technical issues that we've had for the remainder of this session. If you'd like a more representative idea of what the qualifying times look like, you can check out the live timing page, which we have linked to before. It's aroc.assettocourseservice.com/live-timing. Obviously, very Monaco-esque, this post-circuit in some regard. You've got, I'm not even going to attempt to name some of the corners, but there are other corners, like the casino corner, which obviously has echoes of Monaco about it, and they're in a very similar part of the world as well. As Matt Daly, I believe, having a bit of an incident in qualifying there, or Let's see, is he able to carry? He was just about, but as he's flown over a curb, it's chucked him wide and it's put him in a wall. Luckily, he is able to carry on and is still predicted for a 127.1 on this lap. We can actually see him go relatively well indeed, even with a collision. That sees him go 4th fastest as the timer now hits 0. So there is confirmation of just how good that lap could have been. I reckon that could have been potentially a P2, maybe even a P1 if he'd really got things together on that lap. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be, and Matt Daly will be starting from P4 on the grid. The second row of the grid, then, I'm sure he'll be very happy with that indeed. Likewise, Andrew Whitehead will be very pleased with his early qualifying effort. A 126.3 sees him on pole position. John Cole has to settle for 2 in second position, rather, but he's still on the front row of the grid. And then we have Alan Matthews, Nathan Birch, Matt Daly, Jack Hodson, Paul Brady, Rosie Hodson leading the AM charge, Steve Knight in P9, Andrew Harvey in P10, Guy Sawbrick in P11, and that rounds out the qualifying order. So after a bit of a chaotic session for multiple reasons, we hope that most of them are resolved, as that looks like it's got a flat tyre, that is for sure. Or maybe the aero balance is just really looking a little bit weird on Matt Daly's car. We are ready for an impressive drift that was nearly. It wasn't going to be in the end, unfortunately, for Matt, though. We are looking forward, though, to race 1 coming up in just a few moments' time. And welcome back on the grid here at Po for race 1 of round 3 of the 939 Corsa AROC Touring Car Championship for 2023. And just look at how compact that grid is. Andrew Whitehead leads the charge on the medium compound tires. John Cole's going aggressive at the start of the race and is opting for the softs. Alan Matthews P3, Nathan Birch P4, Matt Daly P5, Jack Hudson P6, Paul Brady P7, Rosie Hudson P8, Steve Knight P9, Andrew Harvey P10, Guy Swarbrick P11. After what was an exciting qualifying session with John Cole flashing the light, he's raring to go. There's only 10 seconds to go anyway. He is certainly looking forward to this one, I am sure. And so are we. What an interesting track to be racing at. I'm very privileged to be commentating on it. There are 6 red lights on the gantry as the revs rise. 1 second to go, and we are away. After a good launch for Andrew Whitehead as he heads down towards the first right-hander. There is Alan Matthews looking up the insides. I think he might have got squeezed, or squozed there, rather. As who is that there? Is that Greg Young? No, I think that is Jack No, it wasn't Jack Hudson, it was Nathan Birch. Nathan Birch actually collected, or Guy Swarbrick rather, collecting Nathan Birch in the process as well. That is just part and parcel of racing on such a tight, twisty circuit. But there is still Andrew Whitehead leading the charge, half a second up on John Cole. Matt Daly has done very well at the start of this race, already up into P3. He's going to be challenging for the lead of this race, I am sure, at some point. Jack Hudson in P4. He's another great getaway as well. Paul Brady in that fantastic Martini liveried car. That just seems to suit this French street circuit for some reason. But Jack Hudson certainly doesn't seem to be suiting it right at this point in time. He's made contact with the inside wall and has dived down into P6 as a result. Just look at how hard these cars are leaning into some of these bends. It's very fast in certain points for a street circuit, and it certainly tests the cars, especially with all the camber changes. Well, some of them are more than camber and elevation changes. Some of them are just sheer curbs, which really does stress out both car and driver. So Andrew Whitehead's job here is to stay calm and composed and just kind of control the race and try and not slip up, really, which certainly easier said than done at this circuit as he rides over the curbs there, the car jumping up onto 2 wheels. Matt Daly there, making contact with the inside wall just like he did in qualifying, but being able to carry on there. What a fantastic spectacle these cars racing around this circuit is. I wish this, I say I wish, I'd like to see Poe back on the F1 calendar just for the hilarity of it more than anything, as Paul Brady dives down into P9 there. Not quite sure what went on, if there was contact with another car or that very unforgiving curb here at Poe just was too much, unfortunately. As we see John Cole, in fact, looking like he had a bit of an issue on corner exit. Whereabouts are we on track? I can tell you we are heading on the exit of the Leon something or other. It's in French. And unfortunately for him, he's lost time as a result. But so has Matt Daly there on the exit of the Oscar corner there. He's lost time, as has Andrew Whitehead. Andrew Whitehead all of a sudden having a big issue as they head around the very tight hairpin bend. He's dropped down into P2 as a result. And now is under pressure from Matt Daly if he's not careful. This has benefited John Cole greatly. I was going to say it had, but he seems to have made contact with the inside wall and is now dropping down further a little bit back through the order. And he's now under pressure potentially from Andrew Whitehead. What an absolute calamity going on for some of the leaders of this race here. As we can see, Matt Daly now potentially in with a shout of leading this race once again. It could have looked like on lap 1 it was all over with that small error that he made into the wall. But now, with errors from the front runners here, he's back in it as well. Rosie Hudson have their own issues in that very pretty Sega liveried car. She is dropping down into P8 at this point in time with pressure from Paul Brady. Let's see what she can do with the remaining time in this race. So now John Cole leads as he heads down the start-finish straight. And we start another lap here at Po. It's a 129.1 on that previous lap, a fantastic time. You can see where Andrew Whitehead lost out, 130.5. He's only 3/10 down, though those medium tyres should be treating him well later on, so we'll watch to see how the medium runners progress through. Of course, John Cole now leading the race, controlling the race on the soft compound tyre, should have the upper hand. Let's see how long that remains the case as we head into the first tight, almost hairpin. It's there or thereabouts a hairpin. Obviously, a massive rise in elevation for the troubles as well, which can upset the back end of the car. Rosie having further issues by the looks of things. Here, where are we? We are heading into the first real corner on the track with Rosie, and unfortunately this race not going her way. Hopefully the reverse grid race coming up later on in the evening goes a little bit better, and Andrew Whitehead, I'm sure, is probably thinking the same thing as we head through the tight one of the tighter parts of the circuit. Now we have the drop down towards sea level pretty much, and we're in currently P2 with Andrew Whitehead Riding over the curbs once again under pressure from Matt Daly. John Cole is benefiting greatly from this. He can focus on his own race, focus on keeping the car out of the wall, doesn't have to worry too much about what's going on behind because they're embroiled in their own battle. And there is Andrew Whitehead up the inside, round the blind left-hander. Fantastic move. Can it stick? I don't think it can, unfortunately for him. It's going to be a drag race down the start-finish straight. Now it becomes a battle of who's got the more aggressive setup, and it looks to be Matt Daly out of that corner. Looked a little bit more eager down the car. His car just looked a little bit more comfortable to get up to the higher speeds, and he remains in P2 for the time being. So, Matt Daly in P2 this time around. What will Andrew Whitehead do for the remainder of this race? If we can get my words out properly, there's so much going on in this race. And all this battling at the front end of the field is allowing the midfield runners to start setting purple sector after purple sector. Jack Hodson and Alan Matthews setting their own purple sectors on their previous laps. Jack Hodson could be a bit of a force to reckon with for Alan Matthews in this race. Of course, he is the nearest car. He's the car that Alan is battling with. And Jack is on the soft compound tyre. So it could be very interesting to see how they enjoy their battling indeed. Meanwhile, Andrew Whitehead appears to have had a bit of an issue. He's dropped down just about a second and a half or so in comparison to Matt Daly. Matt Daly now very much hot on the heels of John Cole now, as we head towards the end of the lap once again. Of course, the end of the lap being the undoing of many so far in this race. We're only 5 minutes in, can you believe it? But it seems to have been, we've had a full race distance's worth of things to talk about. It's been very exciting indeed at the front end of the field as we ride over the curbs once again. It's a very fine balancing gap. I think some very substantial time can be made by running over that curb that juts out into the track there, but I'm not entirely sure if your chassis thanks you for it. Certainly not your suspension. As we run down the start-finish straight once again, Matt Daly will be benefiting from a little bit of a slipstream there, and he seems to be in good pace at the moment. Look at that, a 127.7, very impressive indeed at this stage in the race. Of course, a full tank of fuel on board, and he might not have settled into a bit of a rhythm, and of course, he's also enjoying some battling, so that has a bit of a time penalty to it as well. But Matt Daly, very impressive on that previous lap. He is the fastest car on track at the moment. Let's see what he can do in the rest of this race. Meanwhile, in the AM running, we have Steve Knight is currently leading, a very good start to the race for him. I'm sure he's quite happy with how things are going. He has a fairly decent margin to the nearest AM runner of about 11 seconds. So he can, I'm not going to say rest easy here at Poe, but he can take solace in just how well he's doing so far. And hopefully for him and his championship charge, that continues on. We will, of course, delve into how the championship is looking. But we're on board with championship leader at the moment, Matt Daly. Matt Daly, of course, in the championship battle with the car in P1 at the moment. So this overtake really does matter here as we head, where are we now? We're heading down towards the final part of the circuit once again before we head into the chicane section. And it is John Cole versus Matt Daly here. Matt Daly having a look up the inside potentially. No, he's a little bit too far back for this one. He's going to ride over the curbs once again, though. That doesn't seem to upset the car too much. Just look at the time gain he's made by doing that. In fact, he's already got the position before we head down onto the start-finish straight once again. It's Matt Daly back in P1 on the medium compound tyre now. His job surely is to just try and run away and control the race as he dives onto the brakes. Flames shooting out the back of these V6-powered 155 Ti's. Fantastic looking cars. That is for sure. As we see, he's already making up a little bit of time in comparison because, of course, he's not as much on the offensive now. He might be completely ignoring John Cole behind. If he can do that and just start setting in qualifying lap after qualifying lap, that'll be very impressive indeed, and he will hopefully for his sake, control the race from there. But championship leader at the moment, currently in P1. John Cole certainly not giving up, though. He's dived over the curb, and in fact, that's upset the car a little bit. He's had to lock up as he stamps on the brakes, and that has cost him quite a bit of time there. As you can see, 6-7 tenths already on this lap. Meanwhile, waiting in the shadows, it appears, Andrew Whitehead, who I'd just like to commend, given how well it's gone. I saw a comment in Discord before, the official communications of the paddock. I saw a comment in the paddock before, as he dives over the curbs there, that Andrew Whitehead appeared to have had pretty much no practice here at Poe, and seemed to, oh dear, what's gone on with John Cole's car there? I thought John Cole has a bit of a spin by the looks of things. That is a disaster for him. He's been able to rejoin, but it's down in P3. I was about to say, quite a long-winded fashion. I was saying about how Andrew Whitehead is going to be waiting in the shadows, I think, for something to happen up in front of him, and that is the case now. He's now back in second position. It's not where he started the race, and I'm sure he wants to be back in the lead, but there is Matt Daly in the distance. He's currently got the lead, but Andrew Whitehead now in P2. That's exactly what he wanted. John Cole, this is a bit of a disaster for him because he's now under pressure from Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews, a bit of a dark horse in this race, it appears to be. he was a little bit further back than we perhaps expected earlier on. Seemed to get squeezed at the start of the race, had to drop back from the podium scoring positions, but now he finds himself embroiled in a battle for P3 and potentially P2 if things go his way. So it's certainly all to play for at the top end of this field. I'm going to stay on board with these guys as they seem to be enjoying a bit of a fantastic battle here. As there is a bit of an issue for Andrew Whitehead. I'm not sure if he tagged a wall. Whatever's happened, there is a massive roadblock here at Poe. And what a disaster. As we can now see, they've allowed Jack Hodson to kind of scurry on through. Andrew Whitehead's trying his best to get that car turned around. Alan Matthews has found his way through and is now in P3. So commentators' curse for Andrew and John. I do apologise. They are saying Alan is probably just waiting for something to happen in front of him, much like Andrew Whitehead was a moment ago. And now Alan Matthews signed himself in P3 out of nowhere. Jack Hodson on the soft compound tyres is pulling an absolutely masterful drift, has unfortunately put himself in the tyre barrier, but now finds himself in P2. Not for long though, because there is Alan Matthews saying thank you very much, I fancy a chance at P3 and I'm going to fight you for it now. Nathan Birch now finds himself in P4 in the 99 Corsa car. There is Andrew Whitehead has been able to continue on in 5th, John Cole in 6th. This is not the way, I am sure, that the leaders in qualifying expected the race to go, but what an absolute rollercoaster it has been so far, and we're not even at the halfway distance yet. This is fantastic news, as Steve Knight leading the AM charge from P7, looking very good, very composed as he does so as well. There's Rosie Hodson, decent recovery for her, given how the race started. Paul Brady in P9 at the moment appears to have had a bit of an issue himself as this race, and Poe, I think the fears of some of the drivers have been confirmed in this race so far. At one point, I was a little bit worried. It was looking like, actually, it was going rather well, but it appears to have been a little bit of a disaster for some drivers so far, as Nathan Birch dropping down into P7 now. Andrew Whitehead back in P4, so slowly but surely on the recovery then. And there we have John Cole in P5, Steve Knight in P6, Rosie Hodson in P8, Paul Brady in P9, Andrew Harvey in P10, Guy Strawbrick a lap down in P11. I'm sure he's waiting for the reverse good race to show us what he is made of, although his comments in the paddock before of I might go and watch the football instead might suggest otherwise. As we see, Matt Daly, meanwhile, has been able to relax a little bit. His best lap at a 125.9, very competitive and would have been competitive in qualifying as well. He is leading this race and leading it quite comfortably at this stage. 22 seconds to the car in P2. Those medium tyres should be serving him well at this stage as well. He has little to worry about, doesn't need to overdo it. His job is to bring this car home and bring it home safely. Meanwhile, Jack Hodson now in P2, which, if you'd asked me 3-4 laps ago, I certainly wouldn't have expected. He is now in P2 on the soft compound tyre, under pressure from Alan Matthews here. And let's have a look at how this chaos has affected the championship order in just a moment. As we head down the start-finish straight once again, Alan Matthews potentially thinking about a move up the inside into what is effectively the first corner, but it wasn't going to stick from that far back. It might stick from here, though. Diving on the brakes, up the inside, confident on the brakes was Alan Matthews, and there is P2 for his troubles. And we look now, Jack Hodson in P3 still has a comfortable margin to Andrew Whitehead. Our pole position sitter, of course, started the race in P1, now down in P4, embroiled in a battle with John Cole, now in P5 as well. These two with 12 minutes only, so around about half race distance, I'm sure. We haven't seen the last of them just yet. I'm sure they will be catching up to those guys currently sat in the podium and having a cracking battle with them in just a moment's time. Nathan Birch, meanwhile, up in P6 at the moment, has managed to get back past Steve Knight. Steve Knight at one point leading the AM charge from P6. Very impressive indeed. He's led a really good race so far, it must be said. I think he lost a little bit of time on that previous lap, but I haven't seen too much in the way of errors or anything like that. And as an AM runner, he can be very proud of that. This will do him wonders in his AM Championship charge, which we're going to have a look at now as we go back on board with Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews, of course, keeping P2 after his late corner charge at the start of this lap. Finds himself with a second spot on the podium at the moment. So, as things stand, it is Matt Daly who leads with 83 points on the board. John Cole currently in P2 with 74. So that gap, as things stand, will be expanding just a little bit. Then we have George Brook, Battersby, unfortunately not here this evening. He's on 58 points. Alan Matthews, this will do him well in the championship if things stay the way that they are at the moment. He's currently in 4th with 44 points. Andrew Whitehead with 41 points in 5th. Nathan Birch in 6th with 30 points. Greg Young with 28 points in 7th. Willing Liss with 12 points in P8. P9, Andrew Rammer 10. P10, Paul Brady 9. A bit of a switch around on the numbers there. Then we have Paul Millman with 3 points in 12th, Jack Hodson in 13th with 3 points, Mike Hilton in 14th with 3 points, and then we have Anthony Gray, Barry Clayton, and Andrew Harvey in P15, P16, and P17 respectively. Then we move on to the AM running, and it's Guy Swarbrick who currently leads the AM charge. He's testing out the hard compound tyres by the looks of things, although things don't seem to be going his way, as Nathan Birch pulls off a spectacular drift there, as does Guy Swarbrick as he tries to rejoin safely, but Steve Knight is able to make his way past and up into, remains in P7 rather, but has had a bit of an issue with the wall there, so apologies Steve, that's commentator's curse. I said how we haven't seen a single error from you just yet, and unfortunately I seem to have ruined that streak, so I do apologise for that one. But yeah, Guy Swarbrick currently leads with 93 points to his name. Rosie Hodson in P2 in this race at the moment is P2 in the championship with 76 points. And then we have Steve Knight. This will do... Oh dear, what's happened there? There's been contact between Guy Swarbrick and Rosie Hodson. Commentator's curse is continuing on in this race. And we see Rosie Hodson is able to carry on. It shouldn't affect her race too much, but is in P8 after a small collision there. And Guy Swarbrick actually, unfortunately, is going to have to retire from this session. Let's see what he's made of in the reverse grid race coming up in a little while. But Rosie Hodson then 76 points to an 8 in P2 in the AMs. And then we have Steve Knight leading the AM race at the moment in P3 with 63 points. This will be great for Steve Knight's championship charge, that is for sure. As we go back on board then with Alan Matthews and Jack Hodson, their gap has their battle has cooled down just a little bit in comparison to how we last checked in on them, but they are certainly keeping each other in check. As we have a look at Andrew Whitehead now, he's on 35-second delta to the lead of this race. He's in P4 at the moment with potentially a little bit of pressure from John Cole in just a moment's time if he's not careful. But things, at least for a moment, appear to be a little bit calmer than they were just a few laps ago. What a turnaround in fortunes it was for the leaders of this race. We've already got just under 10 minutes to go. Time flies when you're having fun, and Poe certainly has delivered some action. I'm not sure if some of the drivers will be best pleased with this track, but it certainly is a technical challenge and certainly a spanner in the works in the calendar, and I'm very glad that we've had it added on. And what a way to celebrate these fantastic retro touring cars, as well as they dive over the curbs there. You can't do that in modern racing cars. They just kind of fall to bits, really. Apart from the modern F1 cars, I think are getting a little bit better. But yes, they are really being tested to their absolute limits, these 155 Ti's, and it is great to see. Matt Daly, meanwhile, is testing his car to limit just in terms of raw pace. His previous lap, he's hovering around the 126s, 127s maybe there, and he's enjoying controlling this race, I'm sure. A 30-second gap, which I'm not sure anyone expected such a tight and difficult circuit to master. His best at 125.9 remains the same as when we last checked in on him, and it is a very competitive fast lap time. Indeed. As you see him diving over the curbs there, he is able to just about keep it in check, but he is giving that car absolutely everything. If we have a look at all of the cars, in fact, this is of course an open setup championship. Drivers are free to kind of chop and change their setup as they see suits them best for different circuits or different driving styles. We can see quite a few of the cars seem to be running quite softly sprung, which might kind of take you by surprise at first kind of glance. You think, oh, why would these race cars be wanting to run a very soft setup? But when you just remember just the sheer number of curbs at this circuit, you want something that controls and absorbs the impacts well, so that it doesn't upset the car too much. And I think the slightly softer setup might be the answer here. What is going on at the back end of the running here? It is Rosie Hodson in P8 at the moment, trying to defend from Andrew Harvey. Andrew Harvey is, of course, a pro runner, so she will at some point have to concede, but Paul Brady is there as well. Rosie's P2 in the Amberling is safe at this point in time, so she can afford to bring the car home safely, which I'm sure is a bit of a boon for her championship fight, and I'm sure she's quite pleased with that as well. There is Andrew Harvey and Paul Brady. It'll be quite interesting to see how their battle unfolds when they have a bit of traffic in front of them, and they've got a bit of traffic at one of the tightest circuits I think any of us will ever visit on a racing calendar. We're on board then with Alan Matthews in a moment. Those medium tyres obviously serving him well. He's built up a little bit of a gap to Jack Hodson now, but credit where credit is due to Jack Hodson. He's done a very good job of keeping Alan in check, even with what will be more worn out tyres at this point in time. He's very much keeping Alan hot on his heels and is certainly not giving in at this point in time, because with 5 minutes, in fact nearly 6, probably 7 minutes to go here at Po, anything can happen, and anything certainly has happened here. What's happened to Andrew Whitehead? I think he's had a bit of an issue, because he seems to have lost a lot of speed there, and after what looked like at one point a relatively comfortable margin, he's now finding himself 6 seconds down already. So I think this has been a bit of a race to forget for Andrew Whitehead, and he'll be focusing his sights on the reverse grid race coming up in just a few moments' time. Meanwhile, John Cole in P4 at the moment. Was that the headlights flashing on? That might have just been a trick of the eye there. But maybe he's trying to think of a little bit more like an endurance driver and trying to play the long game and try and see if he can scrape a podium from this race. You never know, anything could happen yet. Andrew Whitehead then will be, I'm sure, sparing on Nathan Birch, to be honest, because that gap to the car in front has closed down quite dramatically in the past lap, and Nathan can now see Andrew Whitehead up in front, and now has someone to kind of echo and follow, and potentially try and close up on. With over 5 minutes to go in this race, that's certainly not out of the question. Let's have a look at the current pace on track at the moment. I can tell you that in terms of current pace, it is Nathan Birch with 1 minute 30. 0.5, so not up there with the absolute fastest on track, but if we compare that to Andrew Whitehead, it's not a representative time. Obviously, he definitely had an issue. It was a 1 minute 39.0 on the previous lap for Andrew, and then we compare their best time at 1 minute 27.5 for Andrew and a 1 minute 28.1 for Nathan. So I don't think a bit of a comeback for Nathan Birch is out of the cards just yet. We'll wait and see, but he is, style points, I think, certainly leading this race. The amount of times I've seen the back end on that 155 hanging out and absolutely just looking spectacular on screen is not zero, shall we say. And yeah, in terms of style points, Nathan, you certainly win this race so far. Apologies if I missed any other spectacular drifting. I'll make sure to reward you if I've missed some in this race so far. I'm sure we'll get some post-race donuts as well at some point. Oh dear, that is a bit of a disaster for Nathan Birch there as he was heading towards the first corner. He's made big contact with the barrier. The back end stepped out, I think. I think he's running quite an oversteer. He settled the back end seemed to step out under braking as he was cornering while braking and made contact with the wall. It put him on the inside barrier. He was able to recover, luckily for him. It shouldn't affect his race overall, but he is... In fact, no, it has, because there is Nathan Birch down in P6 now. Correct me, I am quite wrong there. No, John Cole's had an issue and has found his way back up into P4, so I missed that one entirely. My apologies there. Andrew Whitehead, I'm sure, quite happy with that, back into P4, but John Cole now in P5. That has meant that Nathan Birch has unfortunately going to have to settle for P6, I think, in this race, because that was a bit of a disaster for him. Just goes to show these cars certainly not an easy car to master. They aren't on the simplest of tracks, but on a track like this, it's just that little bit more difficult, and I can kind of resonate with that because I have had some seat time in this car now, and it suits. I quite like an oversteery car. It's not the quickest way around, but I do just really quite enjoy sliding a car around the track, and this 155 likes to be slid. Unfortunately, at a very tight circuit like this, that's just sometimes not what you want. As we now head into the final couple of minutes of this race, it is Matt Daly who has extended his lead at the front. It's now 37 seconds to the car in P2. What's happened here? It appears to be that Paul Brady has been able to get past Andrew Harby. Andrew Harby in that Gulf liveried car, now sliding about as well. We have Gulf versus Martini. Now that is a retro throwback, if ever I have seen one. But it appears to be Martini winning out so far. He's currently sat in P8. Andrew Harby having a bit of a disaster there. He's dropped down into P10. Rosie Hodson takes back P9 but has her own issues. That may allow Andrew Harby to sweep back past, but he's going to have to work for it because she has been able to get back up to speed relatively quickly. This has just been utter chaos from start to finish, and we're only halfway through the racing action, which is great news. We have the reverse grid race coming up in just a minute, so that should add just a little bit more spice to the evening's proceedings, which I'm very much looking forward to, as we now go back on board with Jack Hodson. Jack Hodson doing a tremendous job of holding on to this podium for the time being. In fact, that gap to the cars behind extending a little bit now, 11 seconds to the likes of Andrew Whitehead, John Cole, so it's looking fairly secure for Jack Hodson. This will work wonders for his championship push. He is currently in P13 in the championship, so he'll take a decent jump here, and he should be around the P8, P9 mark, which I'm sure he'll be very happy with indeed. As we start another lap once again, this will be the penultimate lap here. In fact, no, we should get just about, I think it'll be very close indeed. We might get another lap in, so we wait with bated breath. Where is Matt Daly at this point in time? Someone has had a bit of an issue. I think that was Jack Hodson by the looks of things, but he's been able to carry on, which is great to see. It looks to be it's going to be very close as to whether or not we get a couple more laps. We potentially are on the penultimate lap at this point in time. There is Matt Daly, by the way, getting ready to lap P7 on the road. That is very impressive indeed. The back end stepping out, and he does clip a wall. We've got 18 seconds now to the start-finish line. We are going to get another couple of laps here at Po, which is great news. I think we'll have to stay on board with Matt Daly for those final couple of laps, because they have been thoroughly deserved parade laps for him, really. They have just been fantastic running after he found his way in P1. He capitalised on the errors of others and has managed to control the race quite comfortably indeed. He seems to have nailed it now, has Matt Daly. And we now see that Rosie Hodson into P8 at this point in time. Paul Brady having a bit of a disaster. That is not where you want your car to be parked. He's going to try his best to get it back on track as quickly as possible. Has been able to do so, thank God, but that has allowed Andrew Harvey into P9, so I'm not quite sure he'll be best pleased with himself at this point in time, will Paul Brady, but Andrew Harvey able to benefit from that. Meanwhile, it is Matt Daly in the lead of the race, of course. No change there. We weren't really expecting one. And we are now on the penultimate lap of this race. Where is Matt Daly? He's heading now down towards the chicanes here, coming out of the Beaumont corner. And we have not long to go in this race after what has been a tale of fortune and misfortune based on what driver you asked. We are now getting ready to bring it back into the pits, repair the cars, and I think they're going to need quite a lot of repairing. The mechanics are going to have to work hard in these 5 minutes between the end of race 1 and race 2. But we are now ready for the reverse grid race coming up in just a few minutes' time, and I'm sure Matt Daly is ready. He's already had to work his way a bit through the field in race 1, and he's going to repeat it all again in race 2 as we now start the final lap of this race. 128.6 for Matt Daly. Let's see what he can do this time round. We're going to keep a very close eye, though, what is going on between Jack Hodson and Alan Matthews, because they haven't given up at all. They're still a couple of seconds apart from each other, and anything could happen at this stage in the race. Heading up then through the first hairpin bend on the circuit. The big elevation rise for Matt Daly. He rides over the curbs here, but there's no major issues with that. Predicted at the moment at 126.4, which would be a great way to finish this race. You can see there at the bottom left of the screen showing you his best lap, his previous lap, and what time is predicted on this lap. A very handy little graphic for you there. We head round the long sweeping right-hander of Beaumont and then run our way down through the tight twisty chicanes of the downhill here at Po as the car slides round. It has been complete domination for Matt Daly in race. Well, I say complete. It wasn't looking that way at the start of the race, but it certainly ended that way after a bit of a disaster for a few other drivers in this race. Matt Daly bounces over the curbs once again, sliding his way, fishnailing his way round down to the start-finish near enough straight for one final time at Po. Just a couple of seconds. It will be Matt Daly who comes across the line to take the race 1 victory. Congratulations, Matt, for a spectacular drive and an utter domination of this race. As I'm sure, going to be getting some victory donuts in just a moment's time. But we have a couple of cars left to bring home as he he drifts his way round the first corner of his parade lap there. Now we have Alan Matthews. Remember I said Alan Matthews and Jack Hodson, keep an eye on them. They could be getting close. Here they are now, only a few tenths apart on the final lap of this race. This is the point where does Jack Hodson say it's all or nothing, really? Do I go for P2 or do I make sure I've secured this podium? I think that the back end stepping out of him might have answered that question for him. He's dropped back a little bit now as we head down towards the start-finish straight with these two now to round out the podium in just a moment's time. It is Alan Matthews with a great recovery drive who will be coming home to take P2 in this race. Jack Cotton, congratulations, out of nowhere it seemed, takes home the final spot on the podium. Andrew Whitehead, a great recovery for him. I think about 5 or 10 more laps he would have been in there with those podium sitters, and that would have been a recovery to remember, as there's been more contact for some drivers there. John Cole will be coming home in just a minute, a case of what could have been, I think, for his race, but he comes home to take P5. And then we have, in a few moments' time, Nathan Birch coming home P6. Rosie Hodson has completed her race and takes, apologies, and does in fact take the AM race victory in P7. Steve Knight in P8, Paul Brady in P9. Andrew Harvey will be coming home P10. There is Nathan Birch crossing the line. We haven't had any victory donuts just yet. I don't know if they're actually going to be possible here at Pau, because it's a very tight circuit indeed. I'm sure we're going to see an attempt or two, though. It'd be very disappointing if we don't. But there is Andrew Harvey coming home to round out the running now. There we go. Just as expected. Matt Daly concluding race 1 with a collision with a wall. No, you've lost your chance now, Matt. Sorry. As we see, do we have any other victory donuts? No, we don't. I tell you what, I say we've lost your chance, but you can see in the background there of the drivers in the pits, there is, I'm sure, a very pleased Matt Daly, blocked out by the total sign there over the bridge, so apologies for that one. But Matt Daly coming into the pits to round out celebrations for what has been an action-packed race 1 here at Pau. And the good news is, we have another just over 25 minutes worth of racing action here at Pau coming up in just a few minutes' time. So don't go anywhere, I'll catch you in just a few moments. And we are back on the grid here at Pau. Apologies for the lack of car audio in the previous race. We do now have that rectified. This just a bit of a carryover from the technical issues we are suffering in qualifying. It's just over 30 seconds to go until lights out here in this reverse grid race now. So let's go through the orders. Look how compact that grid is once again. It is Andrew Harvey P1, Paul Brady P2, Steve Knight P3, Rosie Hodson P4, Nathan Birch P5, John Cole P6, Andrew Whitehead P7, Jack Hodson P8, Matt Daly, Alan Matthews rather P9, and Matt Daly P10. so it will be an eclectic grid ready for the start of race 1. We do have 6 red lights on the gantry, but I think we've got like a 10 second... no, we don't have 10 seconds to go. It's a bit of a desync there, and we are off. Andrew Harvey gets a good getaway. In fact, Paul Brady had a bit of wheel spin, which I think compromised on the initial kind of getaway phase, as we now have Andrew Harvey with a fairly comfortable lead so far. As we go on board with Alan Matthews, one of the kind of rear gunners in this reverse grid race. Let's see who has benefited from the start and who has lost out. Well, John Cole seems to have lost out just a little bit, as has Steve Knight, but Rosie Hodgson, meanwhile, is keeping Andrew Harvey hot on his heels here, as we now see Andrew Harvey takes the lead of this, or remains in his lead of this race, rather. For the time being, as Nathan Birch has had a great recovery from P6 up into P3 already. Given he has some impressive pace, we could see a good drive from him in race 2, this reverse grid race now. Just one interesting point is the top 5 now running the medium compound tyre, as we have Paul Brady in P4 at the moment. Not a race to remember for him was race 1, but he seems to be doing a little bit better in race 2 for the time being. So let's see how things go for him. Now, Andrew Whitehead is in the position that he wished he was in race 1. He's ahead of Matt Daly at this point in time, but how long will that remain for? As Rosie Hodgson is going to do some overlanding. That is very impressive. I don't know if you know, but the approach angle of the 155 Ti is actually really impressive, as demonstrated there. And she has been able to carry on, which is great to see. I think we had a bit of carnage going on. No, I thought we did it. I thought we did. This track is just so close together that I thought there was a major accident, but there wasn't. It's Andrew Whitehead versus Paul Brady heading down the start-finish straight now. Andrew Whitehead wins out, which is exactly what he needed to happen here before we have the braking zone into turn 1. And I think Matt Daly's going to help him out, as there has been a bit of a catastrophe at the start of the race there. What has happened? Oh dear! Everyone pretty much throughout the field involved in that, as Nathan Birch is able to get past Andrew Whitehead for P6. What a disaster that was. It's now Matt Daly who leads this race, which I think I've heard this one before. We've all seen how this goes. But John Cole in P2 and Alan Matthews in P3, which is, to be honest, already looking like business as usual. There is Andrew Harvey. I think it was Andrew Harvey who had the issue at the first corner, which kind of caused all of those issues there. It was just utter chaos. Every driver appeared to be involved, pretty much. Paul Brady now in P6, Steve Knight in P7, Nathan Birch in P8, Andrew Whitehead in P9, which is not, I'm sure, how we wanted this race to go. It's been even more of a disaster, race 2 compared to race 1, and then we have Jack Hodgson on the softs at the back end of the field. Now he needs to use this time to his advantage to try and catch back up. Unfortunately, we have lost the timer, but I can tell you there is still 22 minutes to go in this race, so plenty of time for him to make up a few positions. Meanwhile, Matt Daly settling back in to his groove. He was running the medium compound tyre in race 1. He's now opted for the soft, which is interesting. He's I can tell you 231 miles an hour is not what these cars are achieving here. It's 134, which is still impressive on a tight street circuit like this. But Matt Daly is now already 3 seconds clear of the rest of the field, with 21 minutes to go. And on the soft compound tyre as well. Now, it begs the question, why bother changing things up, given how race 1 went? Probably because he feels like he can afford to. With such a margin at the end of race 1, he feels like probably he can afford to gamble maybe and set a more impressive lap time, or try and build up an earlier advantage, try and scythe his way through the field at the start of the reverse grid race, which he hasn't needed to do too much of, as it turns out. But either way, he's decided to run the soft compound tyres, and we'll see how they perform for him later on. Our front runner in terms of medium compound tyres is Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews sits in P3 at the moment and could be on for a great race here. He's had a good start and, as we say, should last long into the race. Matt Daly, meanwhile, busy setting purple sectors on that previous lap. Clearly, the soft compound tyres providing some benefit at this point, because it's a 125.7. I can tell you already, only a few minutes into the race, that is 2/10 clear of his previous best lap in race 1. And we'll, of course, have a look at how race 1 affected things in this championship, as I believe there's been another collision. It was with Rosie Hodgson and Andrew Whitehead. Andrew Whitehead was able to carry on. Luckily, I think it was more just Rosie Hodgson spinning around potentially, but she's now at the back of the running, which is a great shame. Jack Hodgson slowly but surely working his way through the order in P8 and now trying to bring a challenge to Andrew Whitehead. So this will be one to watch out for. He's a 128.6 is his best lap, and that was his previous lap as well. He's going to pretty much match that as we head down the start-finish straight once again. Meanwhile, if we have a look at Andrew Whitehead, rather, it's a 1 minute 30.6 on that previous lap, so a little bit down on where he would like to be. But now Jack Hodson can start to put the pressure on. Yes, I think there is a small timing, there is a small speed trap error there, because I would just like to categorically state that as much as the 155 Ti is a fantastic race car, 200 miles an hour is a little bit out of their remit. As we see Matt Daly extending his lead now to about 6 seconds already. John Cole is very much doing his utmost to keep Alan Matthews at bay and just trying to settle into a bit of a rhythm. This could be a turnaround in fortunes for him this race in comparison to race 1, so let's hope things go his way. Then we have Andrew Harvey. Andrew Harvey still in P4, given how the chaos of race 1 or the start of this race rather ensued. He started the race in P1 and will be, I'm sure, quite happy with where he is at the moment. Andrew Harvey and Paul Brady seem pretty much inseparable in race 1, and that looks to continue on in race 2. Only there's a bigger gap this time around. They are still the closest cars on. Oh well, actually no. There is Steve Knight in P6, and then we have Andrew Whitehead in P7 and Jack Hodson in P8. So we've got a bit of almost a trio forming up here. As what's happened to John Cole? He's found himself in a tyre barrier. That is utter disaster for him. His hopes of recovery have been pretty much quashed here, as we now see him in P4. Andrew Harvey back up into P3. Alan Matthews takes P2, running those medium compound tyres as well. This is looking to be a fantastic race for Alan Matthews as things stand. And speaking of as things stand, let's have a look at the championship standings after race 1. It is Matt Daly who extends his championship lead now. It's now 108 points in P1 for him. John Cole in P2 with 84 points. Then we have Andrew Whitehead getting past Steve Knight there. Steve Knight leading the AM charge at the moment, doing a very good job as well. Unfortunately, Guy Strawbrick not able to continue on for the remainder of this weekend, but it is Andrew Whitehead in P6 and Steve Knight leading that AM charge, and there is Jack Hodson. Jack Hodson, I'm sure, frustrated that he was unable to jump in and get ahead of Steve Knight when Andrew Whitehead was. This will help Andrew Whitehead's race immensely. Look at the car diving through the fast left-hander there as we head up towards the Beaumont corner in just a moment's time. Then we have Nathan Birch in P9. In fact, there is Jack Hodson getting past Steve Knight now, because Steve Knight's had a bit of an issue. He's in the tyre barrier, and I'm sure is not pleased with himself for that one. As Paul Brady's had an issue as well. That's Jack Hodson up into P6, Andrew Whitehead into P5. So just a couple of laps ago, remember when I was saying about how unfortunate it was for Andrew Whitehead? He was down in P9. Well, he's had a great recovery so far. He's already where he was sitting in the previous race, which of course, given how he qualified, is not what he wants to hear, I am sure. But good recovery nonetheless. Still some good points on the cards for Andrew Whitehead at this point in time. Running those medium tyres as well. Let's not count out any type of issues from the front end of the field, although I think he's very much focused on his midfield battle at this point in time, because it's looking to be quite an interesting one between there is Paul Brady getting past Nathan Birch, in fact, as they are side by side heading the uphill. Who's going to come out on top here as we run on board with Nathan Birch, and it is him edging out in the lead just for the time being. I was going to say he's going to have to go the long way around though, but no, there is Paul Brady settling in, because you're not going to want to try and get an overtake done there as the back end steps out on Nathan Birch's car. There is Jack Hodson in the distance heading against Andrew Whitehead for a moment. There is 4 cars on screen there in very close running indeed, and Andrew Whitehead, as I say, a good recovery from him so far. That could be under threat from Jack Hodson. Likewise, Nathan Birch potentially under threat from Paul Brady here, both on the medium compound tyres. Paul dropping back just a little bit now, and it looks to be that this is going to be Nathan Birch's best lap of the race so far. If we have a look at Andrew Whitehead's pace, 128.3. It's not quite where it was in qualifying, that is for sure. And likewise, Jack Hodson, not quite where we saw him in qualifying, but a 128.6, very close indeed to Andrew Whitehead's best. So we know their ceilings are fairly similar in this race. It could mean we're going to have a very exciting battle indeed coming up in just a few laps' time. What has happened here? It's Andrew Harvey and John Cole having it coming together. It's going to be Andrew Harvey back down in P4, John Cole up into P3. And I'm not quite sure what went on there. Either way, John Cole probably quite happy to be back on the podium. It's a little bit further back than where he'd want to be, but still some good points on the cards for him. Speaking of John Cole, as we were having a look at the championship standings a few moments ago, it is him in P2 with 84 points. Alan Matthews, currently in P2, is going to be closing that gap to John Cole as things stand. It's 62 points to Alan Matthews' name at the moment. George Brook, Batterby stays where he is. Andrew Whitehead getting very close to George, now on 53 points, so he'll gain a few more out of this race, and should be, and in fact, as things stand, will be taking P4 from George Brook Battersby. Then we have Nathan Birch in P6 in the championship. He's got 38 points to his name. Greg Young with 28 points, P7. Thanks, Greg, for pointing out the small technical issues we were having in race 1. And Nathan Birch there in the 939 Corsa car. Apologies, Greg. Your teammate having a bit of an issue there, is able to carry on there. I think that might eat into the team budget a little bit there on the suspension front. But there we have another great slide from Nathan Birch. In fact, then we have Jack Hodson on the table with 18 points to his name in 8th, and then we have Paul Brady with 15. He's in P9. Will Inglis in 12th, in 10th rather, with 12 points. Then we have a look at the AM running. It is Gaius Robic who still leads, but by an ever-shrinking margin. It's 108 points to his name. Then we have Rosie Hodson. Rosie Hodson here currently in P10, in P2 in the AM running, is on 101 points. So a gap between her and Steve Knight, currently leading the AM charge in this race, will be closing up. Steve Knight currently on P3, currently in P3 with 81 points to his name in the championship, as he heads down the start-finish straight for another lap here at Po. Let's have a look then. Who is our fastest car on track at this point in time? Well, we have a look at current pace. I've kind of assumed by going on board with this car, and my assumption was correct. It is Matt Daly at this point in time. It's a 126.8 on that previous lap. His best lap, a 125.4, which is would have been a fantastic qualifying charge, actually. And he's currently on for an improvement on this lap as well. And then we have, in terms of the fastest AM, who is it? I can tell you it is, in fact, Rosie Hodson at the moment. So we could be on for a bit of an AM battle coming up in just a few moments' time, because they're on the same stretch of tarmac, and they're getting closer and closer as the laps go by. So we'll keep one eye on that and see how they are faring in just a moment. Going back on board with Matt Daly then into the 125s on that previous lap. The consistency is very impressive indeed. And we have a 10-second gap already, as there's a fantastic slide there from these 155s. The gap now to Alan Matthews stands at about 10 seconds, but I think the more important gap in the podium is the gap between Alan Matthews and John Cole. Alan Matthews having a great start to this race. We are just about at half race distance now as flames spit out of John Cole's car, and there's a 13-second gap now to Alan Matthews and John Cole. Alan Matthews on those medium compound tyres. He'll be treated well by them as the race progresses further, as I believe there's been a couple of issues for some drivers. No, I've got to filter out here at Po. I've got to filter out the crash damage warning that comes up on the screen. I have to filter that out because the curbs are so aggressive here, and often the quickest line is to crash the car into the curbs and then crash into the wall. That's often the quickest way around this circuit, and it appears to be the case, and therefore that triggers a lot of warning. It's a little bit annoying that I unfortunately had an accident in my car on the road, which thankfully wasn't the Alfa, it was a BMW. That involved hitting a curb at a relative speed, and unfortunately my car didn't fare quite as well as its 155s seemed to, so lesson learned, I should have taken the Alfa out. Meanwhile, Matt Daly still leads this race, 9 laps in, and we have a fantastic lead here. There's a bit of a battle forming up potentially between Andrew Harvey and Andrew Whitehead here. The gap standing at about a second now, as it seems to be that Andrew has been able to dispatch of Jack Hodson. That could be that he's finally settled into a bit of a rhythm after a shaky start, or the soft compound tyre starting to drop off a little bit at this stage in the race. It's not always kind of perfectly at half race distance. It tends to be kind of more in the 10-minute region, maybe 8 minutes to go. The softs can usually get a fairly long distance in. Andrew Harvey's car won't be if things like that keep continuing, but it's just so difficult to nail this very technical circuit. Andrew Harvey finds himself facing the wrong direction and down in P7 as a result, starting this race in the lead, of course, but it should still be taking away some points after the way things have gone. As we go back on board with Alan Matthews here, that gap still remaining around about the 15-second region now between him and John Carl. So building a little bit. Alan Matthews seems to be really in quite the rhythm here. 270 miles an hour from the V6 powered 155 Ti. Look at that. That is spectacular. That is. I'm enjoying that little glitch in the bottom right hand corner. I'm gonna hopefully it carries on. Can we hit the 300 mark? That would be spectacular. I have a feeling what it could be is, as the cars are, I don't know where the speed trap is. I'm going to have a look and see if I can figure that out in the remaining time we have in this race. I'm wondering if it's the cars diving over the curbs and the wheels speeding up, but they're also, the wheels could never possibly speed up to 270 miles an hour because, funnily enough, these touring cars aren't quite geared for that. As we go on board with Jack Hodson, what's happened to him? What a shame, unfortunately, given the highs of race 1. He now finds himself in the lows of the bottom end of the running, down in P10. What a shame for him. Rosie Hodson in P9. The Hodson siblings not having a great time at the back end of the running then in race 2. We could be on for a bit of a sibling rivalry here, which would be great to see. Obviously, they're in different classes now, but it was always thoroughly enjoyable to watch those two have a bit of a battle. Yes, what a shame to see Jack Hodson's fortunes not quite continuing over into race 2. Steve Knight, once again, an impeccable job for him, if I can get my words out properly. Currently in P8 on the road and in P1 in terms of the running. Andrew Harvey's had a bit of an issue here heading into the tyre wall. That should allow Paul Brady to be hot on his heels now. We could be enjoying a battle between these two in just a few moments' time. In fact, made that a few seconds' time, because it seems to be now they are gaining and getting closer together. And there is your answer to that. Andrew Harvey spinning round down into P7. Now Paul Brady finds himself into P6. And he's made it easy, has Andrew Harvey. I think it's been a bit of a race to forget at Poe overall, but still should be some good points on the cards for him. Disaster there for Andrew Whitehead as he finds himself now down into P5. What a shame there. Nathan Birch finding his way up into P4. So a good recovery overall for him in this race, really, all things considered. Potentially, well, we might not be challenging for a spot on the podium just yet, but certainly on the edges of it, as we now see Andrew Whitehead settling in to P5. Still some good points to be taken away from that, but not quite where he would have wanted to have been. It's now getting very close indeed between Steve Knight and Rosie Hodson, so I'm sure this battle will be continuing on. As we see Rosie Hodson and Steve Knight enjoying their AM battle at this point in time as we head into the first braking zone on the track. This Steve Knight still in front for the time being, only 6 tenths of a second separate them though with only 5 minutes to go in this race. If we have a look at their pace at the moment, Steve Knight, his best lap of 1 minute 30.3 on the previous lap of 1 minute 31 in comparison to Rosie's previous lap, which was also her best lap of 129.7. She's flying along at the moment and is trying her best to take the AM race lead at this point in time to show us what she's truly made of. And there's contact between the two there as Steve Knight very nearly gets swapped around, but it was very, very good to see them both be able to carry on with no major issues as we head up round the long left-hander. There was a very small collision between the two, so no surprise potentially that they were able to carry on with no major ill effects, but just look at these two, how close they are getting now as they're enjoying their battle. And in fact, at the front end of the field, there's only about a second or two between Nathan Birch and Andrew Whitehead, so all to play for at this late stage in the race. It's a little bit of understeer on Rosie's car potentially, which is not something we've seen too much of in this race, it must be said, or this weekend rather, but it is still Rosie Hodson on the back foot at this point in time. Meanwhile, Andrew Whitehead is trying his best to take P4 back from Nathan Birch, but Nathan Birch, as we've seen on a good few occasions now, certainly knows how to hold a good defensive drive, we have there, it's very, very courteous of Andrew Harvey to get out of the way. That was probably about as good as it could have got here at Poe. And now we have Nathan Birch in P4, Andrew Whitehead still in P5. Hasn't affected their battle too much, potentially left Andrew Whitehead a little bit on the back foot, but they should be able to carry on. Likewise, I'm sure at some point Steve Knight and Rosie Hodson will come across some lapped traffic potentially, but it shouldn't affect their racing too much either. As Andrew Whitehead, we disappeared at the wrong point in time. No, I was about to say, has been able to get past, but there seems to be a major collision between the two there, and now we have Andrew Whitehead in P4 is able to carry on. Nathan Birch in P5 as well. They've allowed Andrew Harvey back past, I think. No, they haven't, rather. Andrew Harvey having a couple of issues of his own there. But there has been a swap around, but it's not probably in the cleanest of ways or the way that they would have wanted it to have gone. And now we see Andrew Whitehead in P4 and probably trying to settle in on just bringing the car home with no major issues and enjoying the points to reward him with, as Nathan Birch has had an utter disaster there heading onto the start-finish straight as he tries to get the car turned around and join in a safe manner. That pretty much secures Andrew Whitehead's P4 and secures Nathan Birch in P5 as well. Meanwhile, Jack Hodson getting past Steve Knight. Meanwhile, Rosie Hodson is, in all of this chaos, found their way into P7. Steve Knight and Jack Hodson having a coming together there. That has allowed Matt Daly to lap both of those drivers, as Steve Knight will most certainly be settling for P2 in the AM running, as Andrew Whitehead is facing the wrong direction now. It's all going wrong at the very end, at the very last stage of this race. And what a disaster for him there, as Paul Brady is now looking to find his way past Andrew Whitehead. The battle, I wasn't quite expecting this battle, but we're certainly going to be enjoying it, that is for sure, as we now head up the uphill once again. There's only 7 tenths of a second between these two at this point in time. The battle for P5 now continues on, as we have Jack Hodson crossing the line in P8, Steve Knight, of course not for the end of the race, but Steve Knight in P9 there. Rosie Hodson, I'm sure, very happy with how things have gone. Probably, once again, not the way that she would have wanted to have done it. But she now has the lead of the AM race, which will do her well in the championship standings. It will see her take the lead, in fact, of the championship after this race, so she'll be very happy with that one. As we have, yeah, it seems to be maybe a little bit more settled down compared to this time 1 lap ago, as we have Nathan Birch back in P4, Andrew Whitehead in P5, unfortunately for him, and it doesn't look like he's under too much pressure from Paul Brady at this point in time, but he's obviously not where he'd want to be at this point in the race. It's a 127.9 is his best lap, and the last lap obviously was not representative. Then we have a 129 as Paul Brady's best lap. So it looks to be that Andrew Whitehead should be able to bring the car home relatively comfortably. Now, if we go on board with Matt Daly, it's that time once again where will Matt Daly make it to the start-finish line here at Poe? There's only 5 seconds to go. I don't think he's going to make it. In fact, I think this will now be the penultimate. We are now on the penultimate lap of the race. We are getting ready to start the final lap of this race here at Poe, as we now settle in to that aforementioned lap. 132 miles an hour through the speed trap for Matt Daly. That is more representative, as is a massive slide through the first corner, just for style points, I think, more than anything else. It's probably not necessarily intentional, but it looked brilliant regardless, as we now head up the uphill into the hairpin section once again. Rosenholten getting out of the way very courteously indeed, leading that AM race from P7. And we're going to have another great lap, I think, from Matt Daly. In fact, a 126.5 on the cards here. Not quite. He set that lap very early on, actually. That 125.4 he set very early on indeed. Of course, we forget. In fact, I completely forgot that he's running the soft compound tyre in this race. A bit of a change up in strategy to his previous run out here at Po, but it seems to have worked. He might be losing a little bit of pace in comparison now, but he's running along very nicely indeed. No major complaints, I'm sure, from the cockpit of his car. He's looked very composed throughout this evening's running, as things seem to have died down in the rest of the field as well, which I'm sure is a blessed relief to some drivers here, as we now run on to the start-finish straight once again. He controlled race 1 is going to be weaving across the track in celebration as he comes home to take the race 2 victory. Congratulations, Matt Daly, for complete domination really this entire weekend. He looked so in control, managed to keep the car out of the barriers, and I am sure is very happy with how things are going. He extends his championship lead then, does Matt Daly, as we go on board with Alan Matthews coming home in P2. To take the second spot on the podium, the front runner in terms of medium tyre runners, as well as there is Jack Hodson enjoying some end of race donuts, but the racing is still going on as we have John Cole coming across the line to round out the podium there. Congratulations, John, a much better race in comparison to race 1. I think he's going to be quite happy with that one, although not where he'd want to be in order to try and continue on this championship fight. Nathan Birch will be coming home in just a moment in P4. I think, though, who do we have donuts from at this point in time already? Well, there is Alan Matthews enjoying some donuts. There we have Nathan Birch coming home in a little while. Who else do we have donuts from? We have donuts from Jack Hodson, of course, that we already saw. It's kind of a mixture of race watch and donut watch as well. It's a very interesting mix here as we head onto the start-finish straight now with Nathan Birch, who comes home to take the the top spot in terms of the midfield action, to come home in P4. Then, after a long battle with this man here, Andrew Whitehead, I'm sure Andrew is a little bit disappointed with how this race concluded, but it's P5 for Andrew Whitehead. And then we have Paul Brady coming home P6 to round out the running. What an action-packed weekend here, Apo. I can tell you my throat is a little bit sore already, so no chaotic racing around French street circuits for me for at least the next week. What a spectacular race weekend this has been. There is Matt Daly's victory donuts, well deserved as well. What an interesting weekend that was. I think Po has been, I'm not sure if necessarily all the drivers will agree, I think that has been a fantastic addition to the calendar here this evening. So I hope you've enjoyed watching as much as I've enjoyed commentating. We'll catch you in a fortnight's time for the next touring car round, and in a week's time for the next Formula Alpha round. Thank you very much for watching, and good night.